A lot of the time, people want us to pick one thing. The whole point of a side hustle is that you have it and then eventually you take it full time. Adrienne, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Maddie. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. For those of you who are listening, this is silly because both of us are like in a state. I'm literally still sweating from Pilates. So
I'm falling asleep because it's 9:30 p.m.
I'm a grandma. I don't know how you're still alive and well at that hour. I don't know.
Yeah.
Is this usual for you? Because little background, your company Mighty Bean is not your full-time gig, right?
It is not. Mighty Bean is my profitable side business. So I have my 9 to 5. So I don't typically do calls at this hour. I might be working online, but looking alive and having done my eyebrows at 9:30 p.m. It was a weird experience putting on makeup at 9 p.m. I haven't done this since university when I'm going to the club. So this was definitely a throwback. It was definitely a throwback.
That is the most relatable thing I've ever heard. Because honestly, at this age now, I'm I don't know if it's because I'm so high performing 9 to 5 during the weekdays that come 7:30, I'm in my jammies. There is no makeup on, and I am in bed by at the latest 10 o'clock. That's crazy.
Oh, no. I'm in bed. Bedtime is an activity for me, so I'm in it by about 9 on the iPad watching whatever, assuming I'm not working. And then I'm usually lights out 11. But going to bed is an activity for me. So
I live for that. I think that is how we should all think about bedtime, because honestly, I'm not a morning girly, so my nighttime routine I feel is where it's at. Whereas my morning routine is I'm simply just trying to be awake and get to work.
Yep. And sometimes I'll have calls with people to schedule around my 9 to 5. It's either calls early in the morning or evenings. I try to go for the evenings, but depending on, some people are no, I'm a morning person. So I think the earliest call I've had has been 7, and that was a time zone difference. And that took everything out of me. That took everything out of me to look alive and to feel alive. So it's a bit of balance. But bedtime is an activity.
I'm sure you get this question all the time, because I also do too. People are how do you have a full-time job and another simultaneous side hustle? And I am not a profitable business, so I cannot imagine how difficult it is for you, because you have that whole other added side of chasing invoices and bookkeeping and things like that. And what does your time management structure look like? Do you have a planner? I want to know all of your habits.
You know what? So it's simplicity. It's simplicity. I feel there was a point, because I'm coming up on 5 years in the business now. There was definitely a point at which I was I have to have this system, and I have to be doing this and this tool and automations. And I'm no, simplicity. So I don't do Calendly. So it's I don't do Calendly. I don't do any kind of planners. It's I've got my website. I've got my contact form. I use HoneyBook. So that's all my invoicing, all my scheduling, all email correspondence with clients. Everything is in that CRM.
That's nice.
It's once you reach out to me to book a call, you use my contact form. It comes through as an email, and I will actually go back and forth with you to schedule a call. I used Calendly at one point, and and I didn't update my calendar properly, so someone booked a call and then I missed it. And so I was okay, this isn't for me. Yeah. I need to actually oh, Maddie, you want to meet at this date, this time? I will send you a calendar invite. That is my process. And
I think everything's so underrated.
It is.
When you're explaining it, my first reaction is I don't understand, because but the more that I think about it, I think what is interesting and starts to make sense for me is that there's not all of these disparate sources that exist that you quote unquote like don't have to think about, right? Like Calendly, I send somebody a link, it populates, they pick a time that supposedly works with my calendar. However, like I sometimes forget that the way that I put it into my iCloud calendar, I'll be like, oh, I'm out of town this day. And I'll put like, oh, I'm going camping, you know, whatever. But my Calendly doesn't necessarily recognize that. So then people are booking on like days that I'm traveling. And I've started to have to do all this intricate like travel time putting into my calendar to so then that way people don't book. And like, I think your approach is interesting because you are so present throughout every single step of the process. Like when you're there, you're dedicating 100% of your brain power to whatever activity that is. So it's almost like you're more high performing as opposed to like having all of these like supposed tools that are supposed to make your life easier. But I think when things are like out of sight, out of mind, that's when issues start to come up. So I think that approach is really unique and one that I am starting to like lean into more. I think simplicity is so underrated. When I started the podcast, I remember having like a million to-do list items for each and every single episode, like from finding covers on Pinterest to like doing 4 different social posts, one for every single day. And like, it started to become such a chore. And I was like, the whole reason I do this is because I love it and it's fun. And if
now
the
it's
back
just
end,
like work.
right. And I'm like, and if the back end doesn't support the initial goal, which is to have fun and enjoy myself, then it's not, so then we have to try something different.
Yeah. And I will also say like benefit of having that more manual process, which I recognize may not work for everyone, but I'm able to at least establish like there's some correspondence with that person. And typically that's also when I can kind of weed out people where it's like we're not a good fit.
Yeah.
You can learn a lot just by going back and forth with people. And so I prefer that because again, when you only have like 20, 25 hours a week to devote to a business, I can't give 30 minutes on a discovery call with a client that's not aligned at all, that I can't help, that, you know, it wouldn't work well. That's 30 minutes that I can't get back. So I'm very mindful of like, if we're hopping on a call, it's because I feel like we're aligned. I feel like there's something that value that I can offer you. I feel like it could be a good fit. So I also really like the manual process for that reason.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. You are before you dedicate any sort of like intense time of yours, you've already weeded out somebody who's not a good fit. So like as opposed to spending 30 minutes on a discovery call with somebody who you discover does not a good fit, like that's 30 minutes of your time that you've like low key, not necessarily wasted, but it's more like that could have been spent more efficiently. So I think the manual process is kind of a vibe. Like I think it makes sense to me and I understand it. And especially for those of us who have like a side hustle, time becomes, and I think is generally like your most important commodity. I think all CEOs, that's your most important commodity. It's something that like we can never get more of. It's something we're always trying to find. And the more that we can utilize it to our benefit and like show up as our best selves for each of those individual times, like becomes more and more important, especially with scale.
Yes. And I will also say like, it wasn't always like that. Like I can say these things with confidence now, but it's like, I made a lot of mistakes to get to this point. I used to hop on calls with like anybody and everybody. And then you're sitting there having 30-minute, let's be honest, they're usually never even just 30 minutes, like 45 minutes, an hour sometimes. And I'm just like, there's nothing here. I can't help you. And you can't help me. And then after I'm like, I'll get back to you. And I had to now write the like 180 email where I'm like, after giving it some more thought and you know, so it's just, I just find like, again, that manual process, saving your time really does help you in the end because time is really of the essence when you have a side hustle.
It's so funny too. I feel like everybody goes through that period of time where you're like, I will accept a call from literally anyone on the planet, like who shows the first barest interest in me. And you're like, yes, like let's get it booked, you know? Like even for me, I have had to start to sort of install these like checkpoints throughout. And also I think be more confident about saying no when I feel like it's not a good fit. Like
magic word.
That is hard and it's so awkward. And like, as a person who has issues with confrontation in general, starting to like, you start to find all these like creative ways to say no to people.
I know those ones. I know those ones. And it's like, because you don't want to, like, I never want to give the impression that it's like, I think I'm too good to work with you. Because it's never that. It's never that. It's just not a good fit. And like, especially when like when it comes to branding and strategy, where it's such a collaborative process, and it's like, we have to trust each other and we have to be able to have open dialogue as well. Like, you just say to me, like, this isn't working, I really love this, and vice versa. And it's like, if we can't do that, like, your brand's actually going to suffer. So it's kind of like right off the rip, it's just like, if I'm not getting the warm and fuzzies, and vice versa, if you're not getting the warm and fuzzies, like, it's okay. And I will say, like, in having this business, I have had to get some tough skin, because it's like, sometimes it's people saying to you, like, I met you and I realized it wasn't a good fit. And you have to be like, oh, and I thought we were a great fit. Okay. Like, awkward, but it's like, but at the same time, like, you know what? I appreciate the honesty, because I don't want to work with you if you don't feel totally confident that we're, a match made in heaven. Right. So that alignment is key.
Yeah. It's like, I don't know if I would encourage entrepreneurs to like skip that step, because like, whenever I think about it and this platform, I'm always like, the reason I do this is so I can help ensure like aspiring entrepreneurs and other people maybe like don't make the same mistakes or can learn from us and maybe like skip a couple steps. But I kind of think that this one of this, like, gaining confidence in saying no and like learning to establish these checkpoints, I think is an important lesson in confidence building that you can't just like have at the beginning. I think it really is like something that needs to be developed and is just like a part of the experience, because it's exactly like you said, like, it's not just about whether or not someone's a good fit for you. I think it's also like an exploration and understanding your purpose as the business owner, like and it's about like refinement and iteration of who you are, what value you bring to the table, who's your ideal persona, etc. Like, I think these are all like key things that get learned throughout this process that I'm almost like, I don't want to encourage people to skip it. I'm like, say yes to everybody at first. You'll then learn that you need to refine and weed, and then like you'll start to, you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, I do. And I mean, in hindsight, like, there were, especially when I started, and we touched on this a few minutes ago, like, you're so happy that anyone has expressed like even the, faintest interest in working with you. So you're like, yes, I'll work with you. But what I found is like, I didn't enjoy a lot of the projects. I found that like it wasn't my best work, because when you're passionate about something, when you can like envision it, I mean, obviously, you can hit it out the park, right? But I couldn't really envision it. So it wasn't my best work. I also then was ending up with this portfolio of just like hodgepodge, mixed mash of projects, because they were just like anyone and everyone. So there's no alignment. And also like burning out, because it almost takes more out of you to like get a project that you don't particularly enjoy to the finish line. As opposed to like, if you love it, you're like, oh, I could do this all day. I could do it in my sleep. Right. So I would definitely say it was maybe around, I say maybe even like 3 years. Like, it took a few years for me to be like, okay, Adrienne, like, enough is enough. Like, you gotta start saying no. And I still struggle with it. And there are still times where I'm like, maybe and I'm like, no. It's like that angel and the devil thing, right? On your shoulders. Like, it's exactly like that.
Yeah. I mean, why is it like dating? Like, why is this like in high school, you're just like thrilled that a boy is speaking to you. And then as we age, we start to be like, no, learn to say no right at the beginning, because it's more work to say yes when you really wanted to say no. And then like, a couple years into a relationship and you're like, what are we doing here? Like, this is clearly not working. I should have just listened to myself in the first place. And then like, your late 20s and you start to be like more picky and you're like, this is really who I'm looking for in a partner. And then like, truly, I mean, I think it's a very similar comparison.
I think it is. I think it is. I think that is right on the money. It is like dating. It is like dating and you're just trying to find your match. You're just swiping, swiping, swiping. The app that we didn't realize we were on, pretty much.
Did you go to school to be a designer? Like, how did this
Oh
business come
God.
to be?
Okay, so I'm gonna try. It's so funny because, like, in getting ready for this podcast, because I was really looking forward to it, I was like, okay, Adrienne, how do you tell the story succinctly? Because it's not the most succinct, but I'm gonna try to
Okay,
keep it tight. I did
that's okay.
not.
I'm in for the
Okay,
long haul.
all right. If I'm rambling, be like, okay, girl, get the show on the road. But so I actually went to school for journalism. I was like, I'm gonna be a foreign correspondent, and I'm going to
Wow.
save the world, big dreams. And then I was like, I am scared of my own shadow and I can't do foreign correspondence. So that didn't work. So after I graduated, I was like, hey, what can I do with the skills that I have? Because like, can't nobody afford an undergrad a second time. So I was
Really?
like, okay, I'm going to just go into communications, transferable skills. So I went to communications, loved that. And then, but like communications, like you kind of had to wear so many different hats. And so
Mm-hmm.
in every job I had, like I always had to use Photoshop in some like shape, way, or form.
Yeah.
Really using like design as a medium of communication. And I was able to get by because I had some basic skills from when I studied journalism. But then I landed a job where I actually really had to use like InDesign,
Yeah.
Illustrator, the whole kit and caboodle. And I was like, okay, my skills are not up to snuff. So
Mm.
that job I worked for was fantastic. They actually put me on like an intensive, like 18-month design course that I did, which was fantastic. And then the pandemic hit, maybe like a year into that program. By then I was pretty like far along in my skills. And I was like, okay, well, all I got is time on my hands because like not going anywhere. So let me see what I can do with this. And that was kind of like, and I mean, maybe you can relate, like in the pandemic, everybody and their mother was like, now's the time to explore those passions
Yeah.
that I locked away decades ago. So it
Absolutely.
was, it was like booming. It was booming. So there was like one client would lead to another, and that's just kind of how it took off. Now, at
Yeah.
that time, like I said, I was kind of like, anyone and everyone who wants to work with me, like come one, come all, I will have you. My business was not Mighty Bean Co. at the time. It was named something else. I won't even bring it up because RIP to that brand name. It was truly tragic. But I started off working with anyone and everyone. And then I was like, okay, you know what? I want to work with female owned, women owned small businesses because I started to find my design style. My design style was very feminine, very bold, vibrant, creative. But what I
Mm.
found was because I was still working my 9 to 5 and my business at the time, well, my business still is, but the business was part time. It was really hard to compete with like full time designers, agencies, things like that. And also, like, it was almost like I was setting myself up. And I can only speak from my own experience. I know people do this all the time and it works out just fine. It didn't work for me. I just found that I was almost like setting myself up to fail because I was like committing to these insane deadlines, like someone
Yeah.
might be like, I need an entire visual identity designed in 2 weeks. And I was like, I
What?
don't, and typically like if I was working full time, like I'd be like, okay, sure, but I'm going to charge you a rush fee. And like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It'd be like an intensive, but I could not, no amount of rush fees could, unless I'm taking vacation time from work, right? I don't have 2 weeks to give. So I just found that it was like, I was really frustrated, burnt out, and just like disappointed because I had these very unrealistic goals for myself.
Mm.
So I was like, okay, I love what I do, but this target audience is not really working for me because at the same time or around that same time, I had started working with a client in Nashville and they had a full-time business, but they were starting something on the side. And it was like, to this day, one of my favorite clients. Like it was just a match made in heaven. And I was like, I think I'm gonna try that. I think I want to try focusing specifically on women who have, 9 to 5 full-time jobs, but they want to monetize their passion. They want to build something on the side. I think I'm going to try that. So end of 2023, the end of last year, I rebranded. So that's when Mighty Bean Co. came about, or maybe it was end of 2022. Sorry, end of 2022. And I've just been going that route ever since. And I'm amazed at how many other people are out there like us who have 9 to 5s, but have their own stuff on the side. So I've definitely kind of found my niche.
Yeah. I think something I kind of want to talk about a little bit more are these unrealistic expectations, because I think to your point, during the pandemic, which I think is one of the most beautiful things that came out of the experience, is that it really showed us what's important in life. It showed us like, you do not actually need to rely on these big companies where we're taught to have relied on, because we're like, oh, it's secure, it's safe.
I know.
And in fact, nobody is safe. The only person that can bring you true joy and happiness is yourself. So like, you got to do what you got to do. And I think that that's incredible. And it gave people the space to explore that, to actually like see that they could make their passions their jobs. And I think that like the world is a much better place as a result of that. But interestingly, because it was such like a switch that flipped, where all of a sudden we were like, well, let's start monetizing our passions. Everyone was like, fuck it, I'll be rich in like a year,
Yeah.
And even for me, like, I have I'm like a big believer in manifestation. I always set like really weird goals for myself. Even, not to say that I don't work to make them come true, I do, but I'm also like not attached to the outcome, because I think before I used to be really attached to the outcome, and then I would feel like a failure, and then like we would get into a bad spiral. So I have a post-it note on my whiteboard that I wrote like almost a year ago, where I was like, in a year, I'm going to have this amount of followers, I'm going to have this amount of subscribers, I'm going to be monetizing, blah, 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 blah. Like, and then the more that I'm in this industry, particularly like one that requires a community, and you start to realize that like that shit actually takes a long time to make work the right way. If you want to do it right, like that takes a hot minute. But I think like setting unrealistic goals, particularly for a side hustle, comes from like a good place, right? Like, we're excited. We want to make this our full-time job, right? Like most people do, at least. So I'm curious to know like what your unrealistic expectations were, like what that experience was like when you set them, how you handled it when it didn't come true. Like,
I had so many, it's like embarrassing. I think the first thing is like, the amount, I was very fixated on like the number of clients I would have. Like and I don't remember, it was definitely double digits though, but it was like, I had this like number that I had to hit. And in hindsight, like, I'm like, why? Like, why? Like, I don't even know where the number came from, but it was like a goal that I had, and then I didn't hit it. And then I was like, I must have had a terrible year. But I was like, well, no, actually.
right.
Like, in that first year, you worked with someone out of the province. In the next year, you worked with someone out of the country. I worked with someone in Europe. Like, I was like, and I never had the number of clients I wanted, but in every way I was growing. So I think definitely the number I had was very arbitrary, and just, it wasn't like I had like, okay, on average in the past 5 years, I've had this many clients. So now my goal for next year is X. Like, it literally, I plucked it out of the air. So don't do that. Literally, like, give it a second and think about it. Also, oh my God, my first website. I was like, because in that 18-month course we had done like intro to web design.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I got this. Your girl is going to code a custom site, a custom WordPress site. Oh my God. Thank God it was. So thank you, Jesus. It was done for my church. So like they had patience and grace for me, but like anyone else would have fired me, It was like, oh my gosh. I think it took years off my life. And in hindsight, I'm like, why would that have been my first website? Like, why didn't I just take a template and customize it? Like, so again, it was like I leapt like 10 steps forward, when it's like, if I had just said, I'm going to take this template and I'm going to customize it and make it look really beautiful, I would have felt like I had accomplished my goal. But because I was like, I'm going to hand code a WordPress site, 8 months later, I was like, hey, well, I got it done, but like, at what cost? Like, literally. Those are definitely some of the unrealistic ones I had. I think definitely like everybody, how much money I was going to make.
Yeah.
And like my prices were ridiculous. Like how I would have had to book like 1,000 clients to make my money because of my prices were so low, which I think a lot
Yeah.
of side hustlers like the, when you're just starting, again, you're like scared to charge your worth, which is
Yep.
another thing that like, please people charge your worth. But definitely I had my fair share of unrealistic goals, and I can honestly say like they're hard to come back from. Like they definitely can set you back, and it's like a mindset. Like you really have to like shake it off and be like, okay, I actually set myself up for disappointment.
Yes.
That was me. And so now I'm going to make a realistic goal. And even if I don't
Yep.
hit it right away, I'm going to keep, and that's the thing, right? Like just because you don't, maybe you want to hit, a certain goal in a year, but just because you don't hit it in a year doesn't mean you can't hit it next year, right? Like I feel like
Yep.
as humans, we're so prone to be like, oh, well, there goes. There she goes. And it's like, no, you can keep trying. Like you can keep
Yeah.
trying. Like it's still possible, right?
Yeah.
So
I think something else that you said that really hit was like, just because you didn't hit the thing does not mean that you didn't grow. And that I think has been like a big learning lesson for me is that looking back, starting from zero, one is growth. One
yes,
shows dedication, one shows
I love
time
that.
and thought and energy. Like, I was talking to my dad about this the other day.
Mhm.
I really just started doing YouTube like when I moved to the city. Honestly, probably like a year ago.
Mhm.
And I am so proud that we're almost 200 subscribers because I have had to grind
Good for
for
you.
every single one of them.
Good for
And
you.
like, it's not a big number. And sometimes I feel embarrassed to say it because it's not 2 million. But I also feel like simultaneously that's discounting the amount of effort that I have had to put in. Like, when you really quantify
Mm.
the amount of time and effort and energy that you've spent to get that one subscriber or to get that one client, it's like, don't discount that.
Well,
I
you know
almost want to like
what?
hype myself up.
Well, you know what? The other thing, and I don't know where I read it or who said it to me. I don't remember, but a major mindset shift I had. Someone has said to me, like, so if you take that number 200, like Maddie, if you
Hmm.
were in a room with 200 people who were like, we want to hear what you have to, you'd be nervous. Like you'd be like, oh my God, there's
I
so
would,
many people here.
yeah,
Right.
that's a good point.
Right. So it's like, no, 200 is a lot of people. It's just like if you post something on Instagram and you get, I don't know, 50 likes. I'm like, no, that's 50 people who said, I like that. Like,
Yeah.
that's a lot of people. That's a lot of, and I know it's like, it feels like a small number because, like, the ocean is so big, right? The internet is
Yeah.
so big. But it's like, no, you go speak in front of 200 people and tell me you're not nervous because I would be
Yeah.
nervous. I'd be nervous.
100%. And I think this is a really important conversation because early entrepreneurs and simultaneously, I imagine that a lot of us are like, if you think about a Venn diagram for like early entrepreneurs and also people who
Mm,
like have side hustles or are also simultaneously working a 9 to 5, like all of us work twice as hard as
mhm.
everyone else does. And we set such high goals and high standards for ourselves. And I think that's probably why we have side hustles, is because that's the kind of people we are.
Mhm.
But at the same time, we're so hard on ourselves and we have these expectations that we should be growing faster than we are. And it's important to step back and appreciate all of the time that you've spent thus far and like all of the efforts that you've had to say you did the thing and you're still
Mm.
doing it and you're still out here grinding. And like, I think it's just a wholesome moment where like my heart feels kind of full and I feel like life has been really chaotic lately. And, sometimes you sit back and you're like, why? Why do I do this to myself?
I
You
know.
know?
I know. I know. I definitely have those moments. Sometimes it's like you can like, now like you can laugh about it, like why I do this to myself. But there are other moments where you're actually like, why am I doing this? Like, why?
Like a
Like,
serious moment.
serious moment where I'm like, why am I doing this? But I love it. Like, I really do. It's like, the question I get so often from people is like, how do you find the time? And I'm kind
Mhm.
of like, honestly, like I can log off from, my 9 to 5, get something to eat, get a bottle of wine. Okay, a glass. Let me chill. A glass. And then, or maybe a bottle, depends on the day. And it's like, I can just like sit on the couch with my laptop and I can just be working for hours. And it's like, it doesn't, and the TV might be going in the background, but it's like, it doesn't feel like work. You know, because it's
Yeah.
like, I'm just in the zone, I'm enjoying
Yeah.
it. So I do really feel like it's that thing of like, why do you do it? Because you genuinely enjoy it. Like you genuinely
Yeah.
enjoy it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my dad used to say this thing ever since I was a little kid, and it's like one of those quotes that I'll never forget. And it's, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life.
Yeah.
And that has always really stuck with me because growing up, I did not want to do something where I felt like it was work. I wanted to find the thing that didn't feel like work, and I wanted to do that because that's what
Right.
he does. And it's amazing to see, like, my dad have a job that he genuinely loves and makes him so happy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, yeah, you're like, how do you find the time? And it's like, well, it's easy. It's easy to
Yeah.
find the time, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think now? You've been in this for a long time. You've been doing both
Mhm.
a full-time job. Actually, I should ask you, what do you do for your full-time job?
Yeah. I work in internal communications. So I essentially it's like ensuring that the company's messages are always disseminated to like, the people, staff. So it's all like
Oh,
top-down communications, across the business. So lots of
okay.
writing, working very closely with marketing. So that's also
Yeah.
kind of where I think like the design influences come from because I just kind of see how all the branding is done for these companies. So some overlapping skills for sure, I think. And I think that's kind of where the creative juices started flowing for sure. For sure.
Yeah. And since you've been doing both now for some time,
Mhm.
what do you think? I'm sure you get asked all the time, like, are you planning to take your side
Oh
hustle full
God.
time? Like, is that in the
Yeah.
cards? Like, what do you think?
Yeah. You know what? So like my brand mission is really about like I talk a lot about like having your cake and eating it too. Like I really don't feel like you necessarily have to choose. But at
Mm,
the same time, I'm like, you can though. Like I'm really just big on like do what feels right for you.
yeah.
I don't like this idea that like corporate sucks or like freelancing sucks. It's like whatever. If it works for you, I love that for you. For me personally, right now, I'm loving having both. I'm
Yeah.
loving like the stability, and I say it with quotation marks because how stable is a 9 to 5? It really depends. We see all the time how markets change, but like I like the stability of like a 9 to 5. I really enjoy what I do in my 9 to 5. I've been really fortunate to work for some great companies as well. So I would love to continue, growing my career. But then I also love the flexibility of having my own business. I love owning something. Like it's really nice to be
Yeah.
like, no, this is mine. I can build it my way. Like it's like I don't have to get approvals for things. It's totally mine. I have complete dominion over it. But what I love about having both was like if like for example this summer I just totally like downshifted and I was like I'm gonna take it easy because like work slowed down. Then I was like I didn't take on any clients this summer. Like and it was great
Yeah.
because it was like I didn't have to because I still
Yeah.
have that salary. So I think for me like I think this is the way for me for the foreseeable future for sure. I think really what my goal for Mighty Bean is definitely to start transitioning it to like generating some passive income because I
Mm,
would right now, and I think this is just kind of the nature of business when you first start the first few years. I'm not really starting anymore, but it's like you have to be like on your laptop working on it for it to generate an income. So I
yes.
think, I've kind of reached the point in my business where it's like, okay, what's next? What's
Yeah.
next is it needs to just generate some income on its own. So whether that's selling templates or, anything like that, I would love to just like literally be making money in my sleep. I think that is my goal.
Yeah.
To make money I think that's everyone's goal, make money in your sleep.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely a multi hyphenate. I call myself a multi hyphenate. I think like I could definitely see myself diversifying my career again, like a third time. Like I would love to be like a board member of
Yeah.
some kind of organization. Like I don't know why. That's just always been like a blue sky idea of mine. So I definitely think it's going to be a very diverse career for me. What
Yeah.
else?
I
Yeah.
think that's such a good answer. I think a lot of the time people want us to pick one thing. And I don't know why this is. I don't know if it's because it's like traditional
Hmm.
and therefore easier to understand that everyone just has like one thing that they do and that the whole point of a side hustle is that you have it and then eventually you take it full time. Like,
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think that is something in our sphere that is sort of like assumed, where I think your situation is becoming almost more common, where I see it all the time with influencers nowadays too, where
Mm.
a lot of them also have regular jobs and they do content on the side and it's super fun and it's great for them. And I guess really the point is that it's exactly what you said, where you do what works for you, you do what feels right. And then as things evolve, you sort of allow yourself to stay dynamic and make those changes when it happens. Like, one day maybe you wake up and you're like, actually, I do want to take Mighty Bean full
Yes.
time because then I'm going to join this board and I won't have time for my 9 to 5
Right.
or something.
Right.
Like, but if it's working now, then that's fine. And we are multifaceted individuals. We all have so
Hmm.
many different interests. And I think the beauty of life is that we can pursue it all.
Hmm.
And I'm with you. Like, I did freelance when I first moved to the city, and it's so hard. And I
Oh,
did not like it. Like,
you
doing that full
gotta
time, it
be
was
like, I, and you know what? Like there was a time, I think when I first started, when I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this full time. But
yeah.
in hindsight, like I was only thinking that because I was like, well, why else would I have a side hustle? Like I should, like
Yeah.
that's what I should be doing, right? But honestly, it's like it's so funny because like my husband is in sales and like he's a sales guy. I'm like, I just want to quietly sell, and he's like,
Yeah.
it's not a thing, and I'm like, I just want to quietly sell. Like it's just it's like the idea of having to like chase.
Yeah.
I mean that's what entrepreneurship is, right? Like if you don't chase, you don't get fed, right? And it's like I think some people are cut out. Some people are cut out for it, man. And I am so in awe of people who can just like put themselves out there, market their business. Like I look at some of this like social content, and I'm like, man, some people are so creative, and I'm like,
Yeah.
what should I post on Instagram today?
Literally. I literally wrote this in my notes yesterday because I'm gonna make a TikTok about this. I saw this girl and she had this incredible Instagram post. She had
Mm.
frickin' text going on the screen. She had like sound effects and
Because Instagram
pictures
has
and
all
like
these new features now on their on, and I'm like, I opened the app and I was like, I don't understand. I don't, and I just closed it. I just closed it.
and and even more, like, she was so articulate about what her page is and like what kind of content to expect and what the value is for the people who are watching, and she said it so articulately. And I watched it and I sat back and I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing on social media. Like,
It's vibes,
literally I'm
vibes.
out here, truly, I'm out here just like, I have an idea, I'll do it, I'll make it, like,
Okay,
I'll
but you
post
know
it.
what? I'm gonna give you a hack. I'm gonna give you a hack that I heard and I tried it and I was like, oh my god, it works. Okay, so you post something in your stories, you let it expire,
Okay.
and then you post like something in your feed. The engagement on that post in your feed, yeah, it's crazy. Because for the longest time, I was posting like images on my feed, and like, so I have, I don't know, I don't even know how many followers, over 1,000, not something like that. I can't remember, over 1,000, and I was getting eight, eight likes,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
was like you know when you're so embarrassed, you have to like turn off the feature where it's like hide the number. Like it was like I was like hide the count, like don't tell anybody the count. It was like eight people, and I was like, this is people are gonna think that I have bought my followers. Like it was so embarrassing. And then someone, I don't know where it was, but someone was like, no, like you gotta, maybe it was on LinkedIn. It might have been on LinkedIn. You let your story expire and then you post. Maddie, I did it last week and I got like 18 comments.
What?
18 comments. And I was like, I haven't had 18 people comment on a post of mine in years. Like, I was like, wow, this is it.
Wait, okay, so like let's say I post a story at 7:22 like right now p.m., right? And so then 24 hours from now, that story expires and then immediately post like an Instagram post. Does it have
You
to be
can
the
do it
same
a
as
few
your
hours later. I did mine a few hours later. And I'm telling you, it was like people saw it. People saw it. And I was like, what kind of tomfoolery is this? Like it's and this is why I take my hat off to social media managers because I'm like, how do you stay in the know? Like Instagram used to be simple.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, the other thing is keywords now. Like it's not even just like hashtags. Like it's like the keywords have to be in the image and they have to be in the caption. I don't know.
No.
It's just vibes. It's just vibes now for me. I just stay on Pinterest. Pinterest is my safe place. I'm like, I don't have to talk to anybody. No one has to talk to me. I can just post and leave. That's my spot. Pinterest is my spot.
Pinterest is just vibes. Like I love Pinterest.
Peaceful.
Always have, always will. It's simple. Like nobody's out here trying to trick you. Like it's just good vibes out there.
And TikTok is for the laughs. TikTok is for the gags.
Definitely. TikTok is pure tomfoolery. It's nonsense.
I think you would have to pry TikTok out of my cold, dead hands. Like it's like I am going down with TikTok. Like it is. I'm telling you. I have an account. I do not even use it for business because I'm like, no. This is where I am just trying to laugh.
Yeah,
my head off. It's that. No, that's my favorite app, and the search engine on it is disgustingly accurate. Disgustingly accurate.
It's I've been calling it like millennials Google. It is the new Google. Any question I have, I know I can go to TikTok and find the answer immediately.
So we do a lot of our own renovations here in the house, and I'm telling you, YouTube has failed me. But TikTok, every time TikTok's like, oh, I got you. And I'm like,
literally everything.
This is and it's like short. You know what I'm saying? Like it's like 90 seconds, 2 minutes top. Clear. It's up close. YouTube, it's like 50 minutes. Why am I watching a 15-minute video to learn how to cut wood? I need also like 90 seconds.
There's always a long introduction on YouTube, which I'm like, okay, we get it. But at the same time, I'm like, yep.
Subscribe to my channel. No, I'm not throwing shade because we need to support, but I can't. Like I'm just like skip. TikTok though, I love TikTok.
I literally used it the other day. So I'm going on a girls trip with my long distance BFF next month, and we are like maximum vibing right now. We're like, we have to, and so part of our thing is that we wanted to get a digital camera so we can take the nice photos with the digital camera, like that the girlies are doing now. We wanted to hop on that moment. And so we're like trying to find the right ones. And I'm like, I know if I go to TikTok and I literally am like girly pop, TikTok, like digital camera, it will, and it worked. It freaking worked. Yes.
Telling you.
Magically.
And I was like, you would have been scrolling. You'd been scrolling through YouTube to find that. Like,
or honestly, Google would not have been helpful to me at all.
It's actually, I read that TikTok is the #1 search engine among Gen Z. That's what I read. And I'm like, I can see that. I mean, I'm not Gen Z, but I might as well be because it's the only thing that it is so good. It's like,
I am
good.
Truly, I am perpetually stuck in like 2000. And so I have fully lost track of what comes after Gen Z. Like I recognize now that there are things that come after that. But for me, it's like millennial, Gen Z, and then it just stops.
I think they're alphabet. No, alpha, not alphabet, alpha. I think they're they're not alphabet. I think they're alpha. I think it's alpha.
Clearly we're in the know.
Oh my God. Maybe edit this part out. I'll be like, and these two are employed by somebody else?
Right?
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure
Shockingly,
it's alpha.
not only are we employed, but we are also doing more. We're doing the most. We have our own side hustles by choice.
People actually pay us for our thoughts.
Yeah, literally, like people come to us for wisdom, which
Believe it or
is
not. Believe it or not. Oh my God.
this
Oh my
has
God.
honestly been such a fun conversation. I have laughed so much. Like, this is not what I thought it was going to be. And I'm so glad because it has been so much fun. And I, f- I feel like everyone else listening is probably also having a good time. So
Oh,
thank you
I had
so
a great
much.
time. Thank you. Oh my gosh, this is a time I cannot wait to share with everybody. I want to thank you so much, Maddie, for having me
Oh my
on
gosh.
the
Thank
podcast.
you.